Good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome for today's Mumbai Happenings event. My name is Anushka, and I'll be hosting today's event. As we all know, challenges posed by climate change, rising sea levels, and urban expansion are all global issues, and they all require local solutions. Today, we are privileged to hear from some of the most knowledgeable and experienced leaders in this field. To start off, I would now like to invite our Vice Chairman of Mumbai First, Mr. Ashank Desai, to speak a few words.
Thanks. So, good afternoon to all of the participants and people on this side. It's great to be here. The special session on Mumbai happening. As you know, Mumbai First, I hope all of you know, is almost 27, 28-year-old now and has been working for betterment of Mumbai city in various ways. This is not the time to get in all the details about Mumbai First, but you must know that many of the large projects that have happened, we have been involved behind without making too much noise about it, including the C-Link, etc., and even the new Atal things. We have been campaigning for it through our government interactions. We have something called Empowered Committee, which was there in the active for many years, and apart from that, many other activities that we do. I will not get into it, but today's subject, as all of you know, is about climate and the issues around climate. And all of you Mumbaikars would be, in a way, scared to know that Mumbai is likely to be underwater. What level, of course, we'll talk. We have experts here. But the point I'm making is living below the sea level is the topic, in a way, that we are talking today. So, we said let's get the best international experience to learn about it. We all can guess what to do, but the best way is to understand what the best practices or what best has happened in some other country, and what is the better country other than Netherlands, which is, as they say, below the sea level. If I may say that's right? Sure. Okay. So that's the country below the level, and it has seen the impact of water and its impact of uh, whole of this living below water, if I may call it, over many, many years. I was told that in 1200 or around some 60,000 people lost their lives, and in 1953 there was again a major water calamity in Netherlands, and hundreds of people lost their lives. So they have lived through this and they understand what it means to be there. And hence, this event is about learning from them. I'll talk more about it soon. But specifically talking to Mumbai, as you know, we have this challenge of what I would say, on one hand, this whole issue of climate change as a whole, which includes everything, air, water, and all the other issues that come around climate, but specifically that we are a sea level city. That poses one more existential threat to all of us, which is an additional threat over and above any other place which is not near sea level. So, how are we going to plan for it? How are we going to see that it doesn't happen in first place? And how are we going to build a resilient infrastructure is extremely important. So, what we are going to do is basically discuss that today, and we aim to explore how pioneering strategies of Netherlands can be adapted and implemented in Mumbai, helping us to proactively address the looming threat of the rising sea level. by focusing on key project initiatives, we'll gain deeper understanding, obviously, of how infrastructure, policy, and community engagement. I think this is important. I think all of us have to play a role in in all these actions and not leave everything to the government. Can come together. I think this is a combined effort, like any other transformation project. Community's role itself is important apart from government policy, and maybe you may talk more about that too, in Netherlands, what's happening. So we are honored to have today distinguished panel of experts who bring wealth of knowledge. I'm going to do a quick introduction, not the whole introduction. I think that will take long time. And that will start when they start speaking. So I have to my right Mr. Bart Kyong, Consul General, Kingdom of Netherlands. He has been here for last 3 years and is on the way to finish his term very soon. But he has been very kind in spite of his, I think, busyness to leave Mumbai. He has been kind to come here today. But apart from being a foreign service person, I understand from him is that he is an expert in water related area. He has spent time in water related issues, and so he is not only a just coming as a Netherlands person, which is important, but more important, he understands innovations in water management and what can be done, etc. So we'll await for him as he starts speaking. Next to me, him is Aman Mittal. He's a joint CEO, Mitra. Mitra, as you know, is a Niti Aayog of Maharashtra, and he's a joint CEO with vast experience in water management in Mumbai. To my left, Mr. Velarasu, Divisional Commissioner, Konkan Division, whose extensive experience in regional administration will provide a good local perspective. He has been involved with BMC, as some of you know. He has been kind enough to help Mumbai first for very long. So thanks for that separately. Uh, we have, of course, extreme left to me is Sanjay, who is executive board member of Mumbai First, treasurer. He is, of course, the person who started all this Mumbai transformation business 20 years ago, as many of you know, when Mumbai First had a report on Mumbai Vision with McKinsey. And that started this whole movement of Mumbai First. And he used to drive it from the other side, that is government. So now he's on our side. So I'm sure this session will be important for us to understand, as I said, Netherlands' approach of sea rise and what we should do to move this ahead. I'll just spend 2 minutes on this event itself because some of you have been coming, I think, for a few earlier events. So Mumbai happening is event that we have constructed thanks to Sanjay. He is planned it to address the issues of Mumbai in various formats and in multiple perspectives. So this is the fourth one that we are having. As you know, first one was about budget, municipal budget, which is extremely important. We had discussions on that. Then there was something on criminal laws. Then the right to service, which I think the third one, this is fourth. And the next one is also very interesting. Maybe many of you should come back. This is about learning from a city who has understood how to keep the city clean. That is indoor. So we are going to get a person who has driven that in indoor. So with that, I think I'll stop and thanks for all of you joining. Looking forward for a productive sessions as we go along.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to invite our CEO, Mr. Satish Kumar, to felicitate the guests.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see her. You came later.
Um, so, Mr. Bart de Jong, he's the Consul General of Netherlands.
Why don't you go closer so that every time he has to walk all this?
Mr. Aman Mittal, Joint CEO Mitra, and Mr. P. Velarasu, Divisional Commissioner, Konkan Region, Government of Maharashtra.
Invite Mr.
I would now like to invite Mr. Bart to make his presentation on Netherlands' experience of living below the sea level.
So let's, while we welcome Mr. Bhatt, really what we're looking for is the Netherlands experience, as Mr. Ashank Desai earlier mentioned, that 25% of the entire country lives below the sea level. How did they manage that? And since 1953, they've not had a single mortality, nobody died. They're also planning in terms of the sea level rising by another 1 meter. How exactly they're doing it? How did they protect their country? And is Mumbai likely to have a similar kind of a future? There are very divergent views. Mr. Devi Goenka was earlier, before we started this meeting, was saying that we need to do it in fact, we should have done it 20 years back, 30 years back. We had Mr. Phatak who said that maybe the process might be relatively slow. So we're going to have a discussion about that. But the most important thing is, how did Netherlands do it? Are there any lessons for us? How do we proceed forward? What are the policy level changes that we'll need to bring about? Mr. Velarasu, who's also had the opportunity to visit Netherlands and see how exactly it works. He's also here. He was also the additional municipal commissioner in charge of protecting the city of Mumbai. So he'll also throw his perspective on that. Niti Aayog, a replica of that in Maharashtra, which is called Mitra. Mr. Aman Mittal is here today. He will also talk a little bit about what the state's plans are for Mumbai. We were to have Mr. Asim Gupta, who's the Principal Secretary, Urban Development, but he's suddenly fallen sick. So he told me that he's going to send his OSD here for this meeting. Is he there today? Yeah, okay. So can you just introduce yourself? Okay, so thanks for standing in for him. So we have, I think, pretty much those who matter in the government in terms of policy making. So with that, I'm going to request Mr. Bhatt to start his presentation.
Okay. Am I audible like this? Good afternoon to you all. It's going to be a challenge because I have the mic and I have my paper and I have my pointer. But anyway, we'll find out.
I can come and help you there.
Not a problem. We'll get there. If I'm audible like this, then we'll do it like this. Good afternoon to you all, and thank you, Mumbai First, for giving me the opportunity to present about a thing that is peculiar, or let's say a specialty of the Netherlands, which is living below sea level. And everybody's talking about that. Everybody's fearing it, sea level rise. But in the Netherlands, we say we prove actually that it's possible to live below sea level, because we've done that for over 500 years, and we've been working on that, I think, for about 1,000 years. So I'll come back to that later. And living below sea level, the Dutch approach is ingrained in our DNA, I would say. And I will explain to you why that is. The Dutch approach to sea level rise is basically, let me see, how do we do this? Is basically a result of our geography. The geography explains how we, as a population, as a nation, approach flood control and sea level rise. This is the geography. The size of the Netherlands is about the size of Haryana or Kerala, in between somewhere there. Haryana is about 55,000 square kilometers, Kerala 36, we have 44,000 square kilometers. Population 18 million, that is 533 per square kilometer. That is more than India as a whole has. although you might not have that impression, but it's more than India has. I think India has about 500 at the moment. And then it's basically a delta, a flat country, lots of alluvial plains, peat, sand, clay. And 26% of the country is below sea level, and that is the dark blue area that you see over here. And in that area, that is where our big cities are: Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague. We call it our big cities. For here, it's a suburb of Mumbai. But that is where 60% of the population lives, and even 70% of a GDP is earned. So that low-lying area below sea level is economically the most important. And then 60% of the land is flood-prone. And that's what you can see here. The low-lying, the below sea level area is here, and this area basically is at about the 1 meter level. And the 1 meter level in the Netherlands is flood-prone. Whenever you have high river discharges, whenever you have intense rainfall, these are the areas that have problems. And then not only the below 1 meter areas, but also the dark blue areas along the rivers. So that is basically what the geography is, and it shaped our culture actually, because what you get living below sea level is that everybody has the same interest. The main interest is that we need to keep our feet dry. You can't live in the water. So each and everybody was affected by that. It's farmers, it's merchants, it's aristocracy, and there was a need from all to work together. And that is in contrast to a lot of continental European countries, where you had a feudal class system and so on and so on. It did not happen, it did not exist in the Netherlands. Because of that, we had that through the ages, through the centuries, we had this culture of consultation. And I think you find that a lot in India as well. Now, to give you an example of what the Netherlands looks like and what it would look like, had we done nothing. So here, again, the map of the Netherlands, and you see the big cities, this Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague. In between, there's a lot of smaller cities. It's one big conurbation, basically 8 million people. So you have Delft, Leiden, Utrecht lying there. And the left hand is the bird's eye, the map, and this is the bird's eye view, Rotterdam, The Hague, Amsterdam. And had we done nothing, the country would look like this. So it's all water. That is what the country would look like if we hadn't taken measures as from basically the year 1100. Of course, we've had our floods through the ages. We've had a history of flooding, and I start here at 1416 too, but that is one of the later floods, but a very big one, and also a well-documented one. And that is, I think, that Mr. Desai was just referring to. That is the flood that indeed, where about 20,000 people perished. And then, of course, 16th century, 19th century, and the big changes. The big changes that happened in Dutch thinking were basically the floods in the 20th century. We had the 1953 flood, and we had the 1995 riverine floodings. Come back to those later. So our initial response, so to say, to high water levels and sea levels was dams, building dams and levees and windmills. We had windmills in the old days, and start pumping with these windmills. And this is actually what created the typical Dutch landscape that you don't find anywhere else in the world. A lot of canals, a lot of marshy meadows, basically. And that shaped the Netherlands as a country, and also shaped the Netherlands as a tourist destination, basically, because that is what a lot of people find attractive, and it is still attractive. But then, in the 20th century, as I said, there were two major floods, 1916 and 1953, that changed our idea about how to tackle floods. And we decided at that time, we decided at that time that the best reaction would be to shorten the coastline. As you can see here, there was a big inland sea, the Zuiderzee as it was called. And in 1916, this whole area was flooded. Thousands of people perished then as well. And what we did there is built an enclosure dam on the inlet of the sea, that is here. And this is the enclosure dam. It's 32 kilometers long. And actually, it shortened the coastline from 300 kilometers to only 45 kilometers. And then in the knowledge that this little piece, 45 kilometers, was also a big dam that was that could cope with higher sea tides, that was a major achievement. But then came 1953. Then there were floods in this area, the southwestern delta, as we call it. And that was a bigger disaster, because this is really where thousands of people perished. We decided here to start what we call the Delta Works. And this whole area of the sea arms, estuaries, basically we decided to dam them all off. And with that, we shortened the coastline from 750 kilometers along all these estuaries, that was open sea. By putting in these dams, we shortened the coastline to only 50 kilometers. So that was also a big improvement in our flood defense, so to say, coastal flood defense. So yeah, we had, and that is also what creates these Delta Works. They created these massive flood defense works that the Netherlands is known for. This is a very long one in the southwestern delta. And this is actually the closure work of these Delta Works, which is the main entrance to the port of Rotterdam. Of course, that could not be completely dammed off, because then you lose the access to the port. So this is a movable dam, and it only it only closes whenever there is a high tide, a storm surge. And the interesting thing here is, of course, its size, because this is one Eiffel Tower. The height is 300 meters, and is movable. And that is a major, let's say, engineering feat, because the joints here, they must resist a tremendous pressure when water comes in. So the interesting also is, apart from the technicalities, the interesting thing also is here that it's not a system where people decide. It's completely computerized. When the computer makes the calculation on what is the sea level going to be, what is the storm, what is the pressure that we expect coming up the river, and then it closes automatically. And since its finalization in 1997, I think that was, it only happened once. And that is also an interesting feat to learn about Dutch flood defense works, that we built for calamities that can occur 1 in 10,000 years. If you look at the US, where I was posted before, India, they have they look at a calamity that can occur every 100 years, or every, I think they're increasing it now to every 1,000 years. We look for a calamity every 10,000 years. So that is unbelievable. So okay, so this is our response, let's say traditional response to sea level rise, and basically sea level rise, big storms. But in the last decades, we are confronted, like everywhere in the world, with climate change, and it poses new challenges. To give you an idea, this is a cross-section of a part of the Netherlands. This is where the sea level is. As you can see, it's higher than the land behind it. This is where Schiphol Airport is. It's -5 meters. This is the general level of the buildings in Amsterdam. These are -2, -3. Yeah, that's basically the geography. This is, the green is soft soil. It's peat, it's sand. Now, this is all peat. This is actually sand. And bedrock is only to be found 500 meters below this. So this is very, very low. Now, what's happening due to climate change? In the first place, there's the sea level rise. We expect now 35 centimeters to 120 centimeters rise until the end of the century. It says here 100 years, but this is an old picture. Until the end of the century. And it's very difficult to say how much that will be, because sea level rise is not a global thing. It varies per location. So there's one thing we have to cope with. The other thing is subsidence, because if you start draining peat, as I said, that most of the land was peat. If you start draining peat, and we need to do that to prevent floods, what happens is that peat subsides. It gets more compact. The result is that your land goes lower, and that you need to pump out more water even. So subsidence, we think another 20 centimeters in the next century. And then, of course, there's, because of climate change, more and extreme storms, and they actually they make for, let's say, calamities whenever there's a storm, like you have over here sometimes, the waterlogging. But also they make for increased erosion. And a lot of our coast is actually natural dunes that can be eroded. So that is another problem. And then we expect more increased rainfall. I said that already. There's salt intrusion coming in because whenever we start pumping out the water on this side, the sea seeps in underneath, so we get salt intrusion in the fresh water. And combined with that, there is spatial development. So there's enormous pressure on land from all sides. And then there's increased river discharges. The intense rainfall is not only local, but also happens in our hinterland, in Germany, in France. And that, of course, sends down a lot of water down the main rivers. So these are all problems that we have to cope with. And we saw it happening, but we didn't really realize what it could mean to our policy until 1995 and 1997. We had a number of wake-up calls then. There was enormous rainfall in the Netherlands, but also in Germany and in France and in Belgium. And that made actually that the rivers, they actually overflooded. They flooded their natural floodplains until the last dike, as you can see here. That was dangerously high, and we had to evacuate 500,000 people at that time. So more pictures of those floods in 95 and 97. And some people took advantage of it. They liked the way they could finally do the hobby on inland waters that were previously not there. So this is the highway basically between Eindhoven, Maastricht, and Amsterdam. Okay, so that is what happened in 1995, 1997. That was a wake-up call, and it actually made that we have a shift in paradigm. Until then, we went for traditional hard flood defenses, as I just showed you on these pictures. Damming estuaries off, levees along rivers, building these surge barriers, these movable barriers. And we realized there's an end to that because it didn't help us during all these floods. It didn't help us out. So we needed to rethink our flood protection. And basically what you could say is we had a shift in paradigm from these hard flood defenses to a concept of living with water. We had to accept that water levels would rise and that we had to accommodate that. We couldn't always stop it. You can't just increase your dams all the time. That's what we did actually in the 1990s. We were still increasing our dams and dikes and levees along the rivers, but there is an end to that. So we developed the program Room for the River, give the river back to its natural habitat, so to say. So the floodplains were restored. I'll show you some pictures of that. And also we had to accommodate water in our spatial planning. Well, we have a lot of examples of that. I'll go through that quite quickly, actually. So this is a Room for the River program at Nijmegen, which is a medium-sized town in the Netherlands. This is an arm of the River Rhine. Basically, it's called the Waal, but it's basically a deltaic arm of the River Rhine. And here is the city, Nijmegen, along here, and it was regularly flooded. So in order to accommodate higher discharges of the river, we decided to construct, or to dig, I should say, excavate a second river arm. And that is what you see on the north side of the old river. That was a design, and this is how it looks in practice. Here's where the city is. This is the old river. This is the quay that inundated quite a few times a year. And this is the new river arm that was dug. And that, of course, is a very costly affair. But one of the interesting things of our new approach is also that we look for multifunctional approaches, or multifunctional solutions, I should say. What we did here, we created extra waterfront. And waterfront property, as you know, is very much in demand in urban areas. Everybody wants to live along a waterfront. So this was the initial stage. There's not a lot of development going on here. This is the old village. And here they created new waterfront and new urban area. So that is basically what is also paying for the whole of the project. So that's I would say an example of also a cross-subsidy of projects that we have been executing. This is another example of Room for the River. This was an area that was actually, it used to be part of a riverfront. It was a floodplain, and in order to create extra storage capacity for the river in times of high discharge, we gave it back to the river. So whenever the river level is high, it gets into this area. That means indeed that you don't have that land available for agriculture. You could still use it for recreation. You could still use it for dairy farming, because floods are always predictable. At the time that the river comes up and this area is flooded, then you can get out your cattle. So that is another example, room for the river. And there is many of them. I think at the time that the whole plan was developed, we identified over 300 places where we could give back space, land to the river to create extra storage capacity of excess water. Let's turn to urban areas. You could also think of floodplains in a city itself. Over here, this is Rotterdam. We have a canal that is actually artificially kept at the same level. That is basically all of that blue area that I showed you. There is an area of the Netherlands where the water level is artificially managed. And also this canal, of course, in Rotterdam is artificially managed. But then, whenever there's very high rainfall, it's difficult to pump all that water out, especially that usually means that also the river is high, so where do you go with the water? And we created urban floodplains. So this sort of, what is it, the promenade turns into an artificial floodplain whenever the water is high. Other examples we create water squares. These also a multifunctional solution here, because this is a basketball field and this is a skate area for the schools lying around. This is a school, and I think this is also a school, I'm not 100% sure. But it's always in use as a sports ground, even a theater, because you can also see there is theater seating over here. But whenever there's heavy rainfall, all small canals make sure all the water catchment from these buildings flows into these basins over there. Water squares, we have a number of examples over there, and then we have artificial retention basins, and that is also an important and also multifunctional solution. You don't just create an underground water retention basin like we have over here, but on top of that there is an underground parking garage, and that one pays actually for this water basin also. So it's also a combination of functions, urban functions basically. Yeah. So these are retention basins. This is an example in Rotterdam. We do have them in other places as well. And then the last resort, if you don't know what to do with your water and the water keeps on coming up, we go for floating solutions. And this is floating residential area in Amsterdam. We've had them in various places in the rivers. I think this is one of the biggest, but we even have floating farms in the Netherlands. Of course, it's not a farm like you in the traditional sense that you have a lot of aerial where you have your cattle grazing, but basically, yes, we do have that. The floating farms, floating horticultural warehouses, glass houses, I should say. So these are also solutions that we're looking at. This one is existing and this is a success, so it's going to be repeated elsewhere. Yeah. Now let me see. These the Room for the River program is one, but also since the 1990s we developed a Delta program that was there in various versions, and the last version was 2012. But these programs we do not do as what we try to work for is not answer to a disaster, but we try to develop in prevention, and that is quite unique. Especially what we saw happening in the US is basically, it's crisis management what they do. But what you need to do is think ahead. Think ahead. We try to think ahead 50 years, 100 years in our infrastructure development. The good thing is in the Netherlands we have finance secured. We even have that by law, finance for flood protection, and that is basically because it is never a big discussion. In the Netherlands. Flood control, as I said in the beginning, is in everybody's interest. So it's never a very tough political debate to get the funds for that. And it's laid down in law since 2012. And the goal in our programs, Room for the River, but also the National Delta program, is we should be safe not only now, as I said, it's not just a crisis management, it's also building for the future between 2050, 2100, that's the time we were looking at. And also, I didn't even mention that, but because of climate change, even we are now also confronted with water shortages. So it's not only to be safe for high water, but it's also to make sure that we have enough fresh water. It would be too much to go into the details of that, but that's definitely also a result of climate change that we're confronted with. And then the whole principle, Room for the River, National Delta Program, is built on 3 values. Flexibility, make sure you're flexible. Don't develop a plan for 50 years that you can't change anymore. Make sure that you have a number of no-regret measures that you can always take and that can always be, let's say, incorporated in bigger plans, but be flexible there. And be sustainable. Well, I think that would go for any infrastructure project all over the world at the moment. But that is definitely one of the values there. And then there is a typical, for the Americans, is the typical European value, but I think it's also an Indian value, solidarity. Solidarity. And that means that if you do design a project, make sure you have everybody on board, consult with everybody. And that is definitely what we did in this Room for the River program. I think it took us 3-4 years for consultations to get projects done. And then you should consult all stakeholders. So businesses, industries, as you can see, the fishermen, the farmers, the citizens, but also transportation, the ports. Everybody should be consulted. So don't only sit around the table with government and the experts, the urban planners, but also include business and local communities. Very important. If you don't have the support of the local communities, your plan is going nowhere. Or you get a lot of political trouble. Okay, yeah, and that is what it looks like. Consultations on water, they could be a big fight. They sometimes are very tough. But what we, I don't know whether, you know Asterix and Obelix in India? I don't know. Okay, they are. So these are the figures there. But what you in the end hope is that you do have, let's say, a consensus and that everybody is happy with. And I say everybody, but this guy apparently is not happy. And if you know Asterix and Obelix, there's always somebody that you cannot accommodate. And that is what you have to accept also. And what we did in the Netherlands for this Room for the River, as I said, you need to also make room actually in these floodplains, for instance. That means that farmers are not always happy with that. So you need to buy them out in a proper way, and then still they might not be happy. So yeah, that's the risk that you need to take, or a consequence of what you need to achieve. Huh? You need to achieve, let's say, progress for all of the society. Now, the Dutch approach, I would call this, what are the lessons learned? Now, the first one is actually don't go and live in marshy, peaty areas, because if you don't do that, you don't have a problem. So, but of course, that is too late for many societies, especially ours, and a lot of areas in India as well, not to mention Mumbai. Try to understand the landscape. So the geography, as I said, that is very important in designing a flood control or flood management policy. But look at how the land is occupied, look at the economics behind it, the behavior of people, of businesses, and look at the politics, of course. You can't sorry, I was distracted a bit. You look at the politics behind it. You can't take as a government department take decisions on your own, of course, that's clear. Integrate water in spatial planning and in the urban fabric. So I explained that already. Room for the River is one that is that requires new spatial planning. But also I showed you some very big projects, but it could be very small as well in the countryside. And the urban fabric, same thing. I showed you a big infrastructure project, but it starts even at a personal level. What we're trying to do with people having their own homes, or in the societies, as you would say here. Green your roofs. If you have green roofs, gardens on your roofs, it retains water. It is good for the air quality also. And what we do in the Netherlands is make your own small little street garden, pavement garden. We have a lot of houses smack on the pavement. Take away a number of these paths. Don't have asphalted gardens. Take out the asphalt so the water can seep into the underground. So that is all also action on a very local, personal level. And then think in value, don't think in costs. Because a lot of these projects create extra value. Of course, the first thing that people always say, oh, it's an expensive measure that you took there. Yeah, measures are sometimes expensive, but they create extra value, as I told you about this waterfront development. I actually have a slide which is not in this presentation. It's later on, I will show it, where we tried we needed to reinforce sea defense in Katwijk. What we did there is created a parking garage in the sea defense, and the parking garage now pays for the sea defense. I showed that picture. It's fun to see. And then, okay, so think in the value that you create, not only in what a project costs. And what we also say, the general thumb rule is in prevention, if you spend €1 in prevention, you save €6 at least in disaster management, because you avoid a lot of disasters then. So in reconstruction or whatever you have to do. So that is the value that these infrastructural works, they deliver you. And then, of course, I told already before, that's a plan for the long term, be flexible, raise awareness. And that is also funny, because what I said earlier, it's in our DNA. Huh? We know the value of flood management, but because we've been so, let's say, safe all these decades, all these hundreds of years, basically, also the awareness with the general public, that diminishes. And then, of course, the communal effort is imperative. You should work together, and all these stakeholders, as I said before. So how do we raise awareness? That is something that was only developed 10 years ago, I thought, or so. It's an app, and the app is called Overstroming, which means Will I Flood? And you key in your zip code, and you know what the danger is that you are at. Now, this is an interesting one, because the people living in this zip code actually are not safe. And that means that people get awareness. So awareness means you get support for the measures that you're taking, but also you point people to the fact that that's a risk they are taking, and that they could maybe have a look at their own measures they could take. And it's without exaggeration, people do have dingies in their garden, in their shed, in very vulnerable areas. So that is how you try to create awareness with a thing like this, and then also prepare for public for evacuation. That they have an idea how to get away whenever the water gets there. That is basically the Dutch approach, I would say, and is it successful? Yes, it is, because what we've done. We went with this model of consultation and getting all these stakeholders on board. We went all through the US. In the period I was there, we had a number of very big hurricanes, but this is New York. New York City was in 2012. It was affected by Hurricane Sandy, and all of the southern top of Manhattan was actually flooded. And what we did there is a Dutch approach. We had a whole series of I say we, but of course it was New York City with some Dutch advisors. They had a whole series of consultations going on, also a few years. How are we going to tackle this problem? And this is Battery Park in the south. It was developed in such a way that now it acts as a buffer whenever there's high tide, a storm tide. It acts as a buffer to mitigate the effect of the tide. We did the same thing in New Orleans. New Orleans was hit by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. In Houston was hit in 2018 by Hurricane Harvey. And same thing there. Our approach is not the technology, especially the Americans, they have the technology. They can build, they can construct. Our approach is the process, basically. And that is what proved to be very successful in New York, in New Orleans. The New Orleans water plan is based on the outcome of these Dutch dialogues, as we call them. So it is the approach that is a success, basically. Okay, and then I have here, thank you, but I promised you to go to that other. This is the slide of the sea defense. So this is the village of Katwijk, which is a very popular seaside destination, very popular with Germans. For those of you that know the Netherlands, I mean, it's 1.5 to 2 hours drive, and you are from our seaside into Germany. So we get a lot of German tourists. It was clear that because of sea level rise, we needed to raise basically it was dunes here, and there was a small boulevard over here, but we needed to raise that. And the solution we found is a natural solution, in the sense that we dug a parking garage over here. We covered it with sand, so now it's June, so it doesn't look that ugly. If you're here on this boulevard and you would have to look up to a dike of 5-6 meters high, that is not attractive. So we created an extra dune area on top of this parking garage. And because, as I said, it attracts a lot of German tourists, the Germans with their parking fees are actually paying for our sea defense over here. So everybody appreciated that. Okay, so that is one of the solutions we're looking at in the Netherlands. That is more for the coastal protection. I think this is about it. So what I was telling you is these are the solutions that worked in the US, Dutch solutions that worked in the US, and it might work in Mumbai or India for that matter as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this has really given us an idea of what Netherlands has been doing the last several decades. So thanks a lot. I was just saying that this has given us a good idea of what Netherlands has been doing for the last several decades in protecting its land. In the meanwhile, let me just welcome a cooperator here from this area, Ms. Narwekers. Thank you for coming. We are hoping that you'll also raise this issue in the appropriate forum and do something for the defense of Mumbai. So just to give to set the background, in the kind of storm surges that happened in Netherlands, we had a similar one in 2005, for example. So let's look at the River Rhine and compare that with our Mitte River, for example. That Mitte River didn't have the adequate capacity. So there was, because of the storm surge, the sea water came in, the sea levels were high. There was intense rainfall here in the city, 900 millimeters in one day, and the river could not drain out that water. So we had enormous amount of flooding in the city. Several lives were lost. So we've also seen that in a relatively smaller scale, what could happen. And this could probably going to get worse in the days to come with the sea level rising happening and also the intensity of storms increasing. So my question first is to Mr. Belarus, who was now not as the divisional commissioner of Konkan, though that would still be your responsibility, but as the then additional municipal commissioner, you must have obviously studied what happened in 2005. You went to Holland to see what they did in terms of protecting their cities. How do you think Mumbai is placed in terms of protecting its land, property, and lives in case something of this kind happens? One. And two is, do you really see a real possibility that the sea level rise will actually happen? And what kind of possibility are you preparing for?
Yeah. I think that was a wonderful presentation, Mr. Zhang. That gives the good backdrop. But I would say, even though Mumbai and, for example, Rotterdam, they look similar, but the problems are totally different, I would say. For Netherlands, they have a historical problem. Historical problem means that is not a recent problem. Like he pointed out, the problem is very old and the land is naturally low-lying. So they chose to live there. So they have to take adequate measures. That is why the Delta works and all the engineering projects, all the capital needs projects, they got built. And they have been very successful in this adaptation. But in Mumbai, I would say, Mumbai is also a reclaimed city, as we are aware. There are 7 islands we reclaimed. Even we have now low-lying areas, even in between the middle of the city. For example, this area like Gandhi Market. It's a low-lying area within the city. It is not close to the coast, but still it is low-lying. So our problem, I would say, is we have a reclaimed city which is not even, which is the topography is such, it is not all draining to the sea. That's the first problem. So whatever you do, whether it's a global climate change is there or not, still we see a lot of flooding happening in the central lines or the roads and other places. That is to do with the topography. That is nothing much to do with the climate change. That problem can be addressed if you do a long-term planning. For example, the BMC last 2, 3 years, 3, 4 years, we have constructed some huge water holding tanks, like the Millard subway. So historically, that area used to flood, but this year it didn't flood because we could hold that water in a water holding tank. And that is in the center of the city. It is nothing to do the coastal line. Similarly, we have done water holding tanks in other 2, 3 areas which resolve the problem. These are all minor engineering interventions. If you do in a consistent fashion, then the inland, the water stagnation problem we can avoid up to a certain extent. If the rainfall is up to 100 mm, we will definitely able to tackle it. But if the rainfall is 300 mm, there is always an expectation that is unusual expectation, I would say. Living in a coastal city, there is a expectation from the citizens also, for that matter, the media also, everybody. Even if it rains, it should be dry on the road. It is not going to be. It is always going to be there. It is always going to be water. Only thing is the success is always in how quickly the water drains out. That makes the difference. If there is a rainfall of 200 mm per hour, obviously there will be water on the roads. But once the rain stops, how quickly the water recedes, that is where the major intervention is. That is where the BMC, it has been successful in the last 4 years. We have, for example, when I joined the BMC, the annual budget for the corporation in the stormwater department, which deals mainly with the flood relief, that was hardly 300, 400 crores. But when I left after 4 years, the annual budget is close to 2,500 crores. So there is a 8 times increase in the budget outlay. So that shows the focus of the government on that particular problem. But still, I would say that focus is on the immediate short term and the maximum medium term measures. It is nothing to do with the long term measures. But the topic which we are talking today, it's a long term problem, slowly evolving problem. That problem exists. So how it will affect the coastal city like Mumbai? So there are different theories, different scientific models, different theories. Someone would say the rise would be close to 90 centimeters, or this thing at the end of the, somebody say 120 centimeter. That is the absolute rise. But you have to add that with the wave action. So without wave action, that is very safe. If the water level rises by 1 meter, we can easily handle it. That would not be a problem. But combine that with the wave action and the movement of moon and other things, the high tide, low tide, the effect will be anywhere close to 2 meters, close to 2 to 2.5 meters. That is the long term we are talking about. It is not exact science. Nobody can say exactly whether it is 2 meters or 2.5 meters, but it is going to happen, it is going to rise. Now, if you see the Mumbai's topography, the western side is totally exposed. The eastern side is between the creek and other places, and you see the lots of mangroves and other things. So naturally, we are kind of well protected in the northern side of eastern side. But the western side is totally exposed, right? And if you see the most of the informal settlements, the whole problem is going to affect the poor and marginalized people much more than the rich. That is a given, right? Why? Because most of the people, most of the international city, whether it's Manhattan or Paris or whichever city you see, most of the things are either in the river mouth, river banks or sea banks. But the rich places are always slightly interior. It's not very close. But the poor and marginalized are pushed to live on the river itself. If you go, why this Singapore model may not work in our places? Our people live on the bank itself. There is no gap between the river and the habitation, informal settlements, unlike the other places. In that way, we differ from Netherlands. Mr. Bhatt talked about room for the river. What is the room for the river? So the river is narrow, you widen it, give scope for more water, then the water flows. That's an elegant concept. That may not work in Mumbai because there is no room. It's all vertical. If you go to if you walk into the slums, you would see people will be putting a cantilever-like structure, then put a pole and just live on the river itself. So our problems are more complex. Okay. So when this 2 meter water level is going to increase, and God forbid that time the rainfall like that 600, 700 mm happens, So the sea is going to be very high, and the water falling on the city is going to be very high. That water will not go in. So this is going to affect totally the people living close to the rivers and other places, which are going to be mostly poor and marginalized. So to tackle this problem, we should have really a long-term approach. But unfortunately, the political structure doesn't allow to have you to take that long-term approach. So if you have noticed the Netherlands thing, there is a tax for maintenance of the dikes and other structures. There is a specific tax. So you collect and you maintain. That goes to the commission, they maintain it. But here, all our work, like BMC, we have done lots of work, but it's all short term. So what I thought appropriate, what my engineering team thought appropriate, we discuss, we design and build it, and we expected solutions to immediately come by. The next monsoon, we want to tackle something. This is all very short term. But after 40 years, after 30 years, when the problem becomes real, when the water level rises, so the whole western coast might get affected, the low-lying areas. So you might need some extreme engineering intervention, okay? And maybe the building, the way, the kind of approvals we give today, so maybe the building had to go up. So maybe closer to the rivers, we should not allow the buildings to come on the ground floor itself. There are many places you would see the Chembur and all, the Postman Colony, a clear example. The road is here, the building ground floor is here. Obviously, the ground floor is going to flood. But the road over 40 years, it has come up. The road has gone up, up, up. The building remains the same. So why don't you have a stilt and the first floor starts some 4 meters above? Maybe we have to tinker with our building permission laws. So there are a lot of approaches, discussions, stakeholder discussion that should happen. And one major thing why this won't be very successful is we don't have long-term planning authority which will see through all the governments, irrespective of change in governments, irrespective of change in the powers. This issue has to be focused. There has to be definitely earmarked funds for this work. That is not here now. So the priorities change, the government changes, the priority changes. So we can't have a long-term planning if the priority keep changing. I think that is the major weakness I see in the existing system. I hope it answers your question.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. I think, but it's a bit scary that, in the absence of such a long-term planning authority and a long-term vision, so and as you said, that probably parts of our coastal areas would be very susceptible to floods and extreme weathers. So I'm just going to come to Mr. Aman Mittal. He's the joint CEO of Mitra, which is a body which is similar to the erstwhile Planning Commission and now the Niti Aayog, which is vested with the authority to plan for the state as a whole. So my question to you, and thanks for standing in today for Mr. Praveen Pardeshi, who regretted that he had to go to Chennai suddenly, and he's not able to join in today. Do we have a plan for the city or a kind of simulation to say what would happen to the city in case the sea level goes up, say by half a meter, 1 meter, 1.5 meters, 2 meters? Which areas would get flooded? Do we have a plan of that kind?
The WMO and which was
Yeah, just put that button on.
am I audible? So the Niti Aayog had published a report, and the data was taken from the WMO that it is expected that Mumbai will have around 0.85. That was the standard that was taken. A sea rise in the next 40 to 50 years, and around 11-12 areas were identified, including the Marine Drive and like the Worli Sea Lake, Worli Sea Face. But sir, one of the most important recommendations that Niti had also given, and what we are also preparing, is just we have to go in for resilience measures in terms of developing the coastal infrastructure. I think sir had already mentioned about a lack of a long-term planning. As of now, there is no full-fledged simulation, but from what I understand, BMC has all. I mean, it's wrong. BMC has already, sorry if I should I repeat what I said? So BMC is already doing something in terms of a My BMC project, which is going to link itself with the GIS layering of the entire city. So what the long-term planning aspect, as sir was saying, is going to incorporate all these structures to then look at three aspects. One will be the development of a resilient coastal infrastructure, which will be like wherever there are no natural barriers, we'll have to develop natural barriers. Second will be in terms of spatial planning, and that is where projects like this, My BMC, will have to integrate itself. But that will have to one will have to take a long-term policy decision as to how do we incorporate spatial planning to move away from low-lying areas, or to have structures in terms of building permissions, wherein in areas which are low-lying or areas which are flood-prone or uh, prone to such level rise, they should only be allowed to have their habitations above a certain level. And third is to what he said, Mr. Jong said in his presentation, to have more areas to allow water to seep out. So it may not be possible throughout the city, but that is what we are also looking at in terms of you know Mumbai as a city, and as well as Mumbai, uh, along with its parameter boundaries, uh, in terms of MMR development. So a lot of population, like the most vulnerable population, being the poor and the less fortunate people, they by providing alternate opportunities, they might be allowed to shift outwards. So one of the greatest opportunity that is coming out to Mumbai already in terms of infra upgradation is probably the sea link and the airport shifting, which allows a lot of a lot of space to open up for replanning of the city. So I think these are 3 4 major features which are taking place. As far as simulation is there. Yes, sir. It is published. It is there in the public domain. And in fact, one of the things that we are also doing as Mitra, along with UD, the Urban Development Department, and BMC, is and as well as the Environment Department, we are trying to make a project for the entire coastal area development for the entire state of Maharashtra, including Mumbai. It's in a very initial stage. So, but once it goes through, this entire long-term issue will go away, because then it is like a 7 8 years project. So this entire coastal infra upgradation as well as resilience development in the areas close to high density population areas, those will be kind of catered to in this project. But yes, that report is available.
Thank you very much. Let me just acknowledge the presence of Mr. Jairaj Pathak, who is the municipal commissioner. I don't know, sir, whether you were there as the municipal commissioner when the floods happened in
I joined 2 years thereafter.
2 years thereafter. So a lot of
I had to
implementation.
prepare a paper thereon
Okay.
for the conference led by UNESCO in Paris about the floods and effect of climate.
And also let me acknowledge the presence of Mr. R.A. Rajiv, who was the Metropolitan Commissioner, who was also in charge of the Miti River Development Project under MMRDA. So thanks for coming. Maybe though you're not panelists, maybe I might ask you some questions, and if you're up to date or whatever you know, you can mention. But my question now is to Mr. Bhatt, specifically about. Yeah. So my question is now to Mr. Bhatt, specifically about. So you talked about the new approach to flood management, and you said basically allowing water to find a safe place for it to spread. But before that, there was a huge investment that you made in the River Delta project, for example, and that is what is a physical infrastructure that you created to protect the country from the intrusion of water. For a city like Mumbai, do you think that we need to do that infrastructure also to protect the city, or we can just straight away jump into the kind of newer measures that you have of allowing the water to spread rather than preventing the water from coming in?
Yeah, well, I don't think, no, let me say first, I don't know to what extent sea level rise at the moment is a problem for Mumbai. what I see is that whenever in times of heavy rainfall during monsoon, yes, you get a lot of waterlogging. So that is basically where your problem is. It's not so much a sea level rise. So that would mean that you would not really have to invest in high cost infrastructure, sea dams or levees or barriers. Basically, I think if I understand you correctly, that indeed. Looking at these urban solutions that I showed, that would be more, let's say, apt or feasible for Mumbai at the moment. At the same time, and I wanted to react to your remarks. My story is not a story about. It's a story about the model, the Dutch model. It's not something that you can just. Transfer to any other city. It's what I said is we have a model. We use certain technologies. We have the political commitment. That is also what you are pointing at. That is all different. But we also have a model of consultation, and that is basically our Dutch approach. But it's not a blueprint that you can just copy. Take out the best of our measures and talk about how we executed them, and then we're basically there to learn from each other. If I look at our involvement in the U.S. in Houston at the time, Harvey was an unprecedented hurricane with rainfall, I think 2 meters in a day time. That is nothing. It's incomparable. We won't ever get that. But what it was useful for us to talk to them, to see what kind of solutions they were looking for, come in with our solutions, but then also see how would that work in a totally different environment, totally different challenges. So we're not here to give you a blueprint on how to act. No, what we do is we give you a picture of what have we done, what kind of solutions have we looked for, and what could be suitable for Mumbai is of course up to you. And if you now come back to your question, I don't think the problem now in Mumbai is higher sea defenses. I sometimes get a bit worried when I drive along Marine Drive and I see the waves coming even over the new coastal defense there. I think, okay, what will happen in 20 years' time? But of course, you have enough engineers looking at that and how to solve that problem as well. No, but yeah, the sea defense is not your main problem. The main problem is in the inner city areas that get waterlogged whenever there's a high intensity of rainfall.
So what I'm going to do is just probably request Mr. Rajiv to just make a few comments about the Miti River development, because that was also meant to be a flood prevention mechanism. So in case if you feel that comfortable talking about it, one, and maybe Mr. Pathak can talk about, post 2005, what were the key measures that were to be very quickly, and then I'm going to open it for questions. I know that Mr. Devi Goenka wanted to make say something, so I'm going to request you to then thereafter speak, and then we'll open up for questions to the panel here. Yeah.
Well, when I joined as the municipal commissioner, those were the days when Government of India, under the JNNURM and the Brimstone project, was pumping in lot of money to improve the drainage of Mumbai as well as water supply of Mumbai, which was likely to fall short in due course. So large amounts of money were coming to big cities, which changed thereafter in Amrut and other programs. The philosophy changed to wherever the shortage is there of water, there the priority should be given. So now Brimstone project, the entire philosophy was that wherever water accumulates and water cannot drain quickly, we should ensure that the drainage takes place more quickly. The water shouldn't stay in Mumbai for long. But as Mr. Vellarasu had said, there are many areas of Mumbai where the sewerage lines, when they drain into the sea, if sea is itself full, then sewerage lines cannot drain the sewerage. Our stormwater also cannot be drained easily. So then you have to wait for the low tide to come. But it is my general experience of all the cities that whatever is the annual rainfall in the city, you cannot rationally prepare for more than 10% of that waterfall in a single day. Like in Mumbai, it is 2,500 millimeters. City will normally be able to take only 250 millimeters per day. Similarly, in Nagpur, if it is annual rainfall is 1000 centimeters, city will be able to take about 100. More than that, you cannot rationally prepare because it will be unnecessary huge investment for for days which are going to be very, very rare. Like 900 rainfall in a single day was an exception and it was an accident. It may not happen again, it may happen again, but you cannot really prepare for that event because such very, very unusual high rainfalls will not take place. City rationally will prepare for 250 centimeters, and that Mumbai is generally well prepared. But Mr. Vellaraso also said that there are some areas like Milan Subway, King's Circle, and others which are naturally lower than the sea level. So there some inconvenience will be there for a day or two till the water drains out.
Would you like to say something or
First of all, I'll really thank Mr. Jong for giving us a great insight into the water management system of Amsterdam and Netherlands. That way, I'm a great fan of the Dutch engineering that way. And sometimes I feel that probably joining all the seven islands in Mumbai historically, did we commit mistake at that time? Because all the joining portions between the two islands, any two islands, is the place where waterlogging takes place during monsoon. So those are the low-lying areas. And I have seen during high tide times that all the stormwater drains are recharged in the reverse way. At Hindamata stormwater drain, I have seen that during high tide, the water used to come in the reverse way in the drain itself. So if that time it rains, the water will certainly not go in the sea that way. So and I derive one learning from your presentation is that we should be creating more space, special planning in that for storage of water, which is something which Mumbai can do. And it's there that we are talking about low-lying areas like salt pan lands and everything. They are sacrosanct for Mumbai and they should be maintained that way. That is my personal opinion about that. Should be maintained that way for holding water during excess water during rains and all. Having said that, we should be creating some more holding ponds in city as and where uh, we get an opportunity to do that. And some of the examples like the water square and waterfront, something like that. We are having Mithi River, we are having Dahisar River, we are having other rivers. In all those rivers, we should be removing encroachments and we should be trying to do such type of planning. Mithi River certainly after the 2005 deluge were trained by BMC as well as MMRDA. I've seen that it has got more capacity to hold water now. Unfortunately, the talk about creating a dam at Mahim Bay has not been materialized. We need some more advisory on that, some more thinking on that, some more technical expertise on that. But we should be thinking something like that, what Singapore has done between the river and the sea, what Amsterdam has done. We should be planning on that view. This is my personal view about the Meठी River as such. But I think that can help us during heavy rains and high tide, because Methi River is not the river in the normal sense. If there in non-monsoon days, Methi River doesn't have fresh water. It has only water from the 70 and odd stormwater drains of the city, which throw all the polluted water in that river and the seawater coming from Mahim Bay. So it's not the, whenever during monsoon the overflow happens from Tulsi and Vihar lakes, that time only you get fresh water in Methi River. Otherwise, Methi River is not the river in truth, in that sense of the term in which we talk about river systems. Thank you.
So thanks a lot. This is very useful. Thank you. I'm going to request Mr. Devi Goenka to, because he requested me that I want to speak for briefly about this. So over to you. And after that, we're going to open to anybody who's going to ask for questions.
Thanks, Sanjay. See, first of all, let me begin by saying that, as Mr. Jong quite rightly said, Netherlands is a different world altogether, and Mumbai is a different world. So let's forget about what Netherlands had done. I don't think we can even dream of replicating a fraction of it, even if we had the financial resources and the political will to do so. Secondly, we have our natural features that protect our coastline, but we are hell-bent on destroying them. We have to go to court to protect mangroves. We'll have to go to court now to protect salt pans. And whatever actually we have in terms of natural assets are being destroyed, mainly by government agencies who should be protecting them. That is the world we are living in. So it's all very well to sit in this room and talk about sea level rise and how we can protect the city, but we are doing exactly the opposite today. Thirdly, I'm glad Mr. Pathak mentioned Brimstoward. There's not one word in that project document about climate change and sea level rise. And if you ask me, that project is actually going to make flooding worse in the city, the way it has been done. You cannot channelize your rivers and your creeks by building concrete walls. You're converting the rivers into canals and now into sewage canals. And what is happening is, because of this Brimstoward projects, you have slum encroachments coming up along the walls that you have built, along the service roads. Overnight, you have a slum colony coming up. Because the seawater is stopped from spreading into the mangroves die out. And then you have an SRA scheme and some builder coming and building with FSI 5 in an area that should have been left open for all time. So this is how we are destroying our natural assets through money that is coming from Government of India and other resources to protect the environment and protect the city. We talked about, somebody mentioned putting a bridge across or dam across Mahim Bay. I don't know if anybody has looked at the consequences of that. All the mangroves in the Methi River, BKC, are going to die if you block off seawater flow. Even that very ambitious Dharavi project, where they want to try and displace 1 million people, that land was also low-lying land, reclaimed from mangrove, mudflats, and so on. And you want to again build with FSI 5, 7, 10 in those kind of areas without even talking about the implications of climate change. And to make matters worse, they want to put the displaced population on salt pan lands. So it's a double whammy. I mean, I can go on and on. I don't know how much time you're going to give me. But coming back to freshwater requirements, which Mr. Jong also mentioned, I mean, our solution to freshwater requirement is to build one more dam, destroy about 400,000 trees inside a wildlife sanctuary, and augment the capacity of Mumbai city water supply by 9%. But we don't even want to do recycling and reuse of water, which is mandatory, but everybody just closes their eyes when it comes to those kind of basic solutions. And you can build as many dams as you want, because you will get the permission and the environmental clearances and so on to do it. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, what do we do if there's a monsoon failure? Then all the dams are going to be equally dry at the same time, and then you have to worry about trying to provide 12 million people or more with drinking water. And this is something that nobody is even willing to talk about. So we have a huge range of problems. I'm glad you've given me an opportunity to say a few words. But I really think if you want to take this forward, we have to have actually a full-fledged meeting. And you can't do this by not inviting civil society at these kind of things as speakers. I mean, this is all completely one-sided, from very pro-government and pro-establishment kind of thing. I'm sorry to have to say that. But I was very glad that Mr. Desai started off with a full-fledged confession about what Mumbai First has done in the past. I don't think business as usual model is going to work anymore. Thank you.
So thank you very much. In fact, so we are probably going to have a similar situation like what Mr. Bhatt talked about. There was the second last slide that he had, that we'll all have to talk together. We might have to fight with each other, but probably have to be at the same side of the table at the end to find a solution for ourselves, because we are all going to be in it together. Yes, absolutely. So are there any, so I'm just going to throw it open for anyone who has any questions. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. And after that, if there's somebody else, can you just, so I'll just go accordingly. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Myself, Sneha Visaria. We are into waste management solutions. I was just going through some reports wherein the BMC commissioner, Mr. Singh ji, he's already quoted or made a prediction that by 2050, Nariman Point, City, ABC, and D wards in South Mumbai could be underwater due to climate change. Not only him, but even NASA has predicted the same thing. By 2100, there are high probabilities due to sea level rise, climate change, and compounded floods, like storms, where there is high risk of. So it's not just about monsoons, but it's about the other impacts of climate change, where Mumbai is going to suffer. Not just the low-lying areas, but also the cream area of Mumbai is going to suffer. So that's one. Second, we have been approaching the government with regards to sewage treatment plants, water waste management. We have been coming to government for plastic, because plastic is another problem, which is the main problem of drainages, where that's the reason your water is not going in the drainage, because it's all covered once there is monsoon, and all drainages are covered up with plastic and other things. So again, we need strict and stringent laws, because why do we have so much of garbage again or litter in Mumbai still? People
We'll
still
come to
don't.
the questions, because
Yeah,
if you have
so
any
the
specific
question, yeah, so it's just the sense of awareness where we still need to start loving our motherland. And for that, we need strict rules, because the same Indian, when they go abroad, they will not throw a wrapper of a chocolate also. But the same Indian, when in Mumbai, they will litter the Mumbai. So we need that sense of awareness where we need to, start having strict laws. Also, when it comes to tree plantation drives, we have car parking areas. We have a lot of FSIs, which is given by the government, but we don't have anything called compulsory plantation for or around the new high rises, because we seeing in name of development there is more destruction.
Right.
So tomorrow, if we don't have fresh air, what's the point of so much of development?
Yeah, I agree. So I'm also going to invite you for the next Mumbai Happenings workshop or seminar on how Indore became the cleanest city. I know that Indore and Mumbai are not comparable, but there are certain aspects of what they did. How do we bring about a behavioral change is what they're going to talk about. So we'll come to that.
So
But
my question is just a
yeah.
simple thing that, how do we address this problem? Because 2050 is not far away. So that's the question for the government.
Right. So can you just rephrase your question? What is the specific question that you have?
So the question is, basically we have so many parameters, be it storm, be it climate change, be it monsoons. So the weather is not, or the climate is not going to tell us, how, in what form we are going to come. So
Fine.
how are we going to address this
Yeah.
problem, and what are the disaster plans
Yeah.
for the same? Thank you.
So I got your this thing, the quote you mentioned about Iqbal Chahal, that is, there are different approaches. One is the no intervention approach. The global climate changes and you do nothing, status quo approach. You do nothing, the climate change happens, obviously the Nariman Point will be underwater because the water is going to rise. But that is not going to be. This is always there will be a response. So you adapt to it. You always there is an intervention. That's what the engineering models, the engineering interventions come. So already the thought process is on. Only thing is for a 1.5 meter, 2 meter water level raise, some areas are already identified. Then what type of intervention that should be? It should be a wall like the flood protection walls like Netherlands, or the gates. Sir talked about Mahim mouth, there is a dam, or should be a flood gate. This thought process is already on, right? So the relevant time that interventions will be applied, then the problem will not be there. It will come under water if you simply sit and do nothing. But regarding your sewage water treatment plant, BMC, we have already given work order for about 7 huge sewage treatment plants. They are the highest capacity sewage treatment plants. The collective capacity is about 2000 million liters per day. So all are under construction. If you go to the ceiling left side, you see that is a sewage treatment plant. Dharavi, there is a sewage treatment plant. Ghatkopar, there is so everything is coming up. It all will happen within 4 years. The ancillary benefit of it is the recycle and reuse of water. So the out of 2000 MLD, about 1000 MLD will be already tertiary treated. So that will be further treated and made it potable. So that thought process is already on and BMC is already working on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Advait Aunkar. So I would like to thank Amanji first for bringing up the BMC ID. I'm working in BMC as a consultant right now, and we are working on the 3D model of in GIS, basically the Bombay 3D. Now the issue is, so I am not going to talk about the problems. I am going to tell you the planning and solutions from the long-term perspective, what is going to happen. So one is the My BMC ID, where it is going to link with all the building plan approval systems, and definitely what Velarasu sir has very rightly pointed out, that from the stilt level, if the if the height has to be increased, those things are also going to be considered. Now the biggest issue from the stormwater point of view is the underground lines which are there. That is not being thought about. So what sir has rightly pointed out about the Brimstone project, but before Brimstone, there has been a British level stormwater drain also which is there. Now I don't know whether, and nobody knows in BMC also, that whether they are interlinked or not. So the Brimstone project is a new project where the old British lines which are there, the stormwater lines, whether they are interlinked. So first thing I feel that, as a planning and engineering measure, we have to see to it that it has to be interlinked, number one, so that the load on the, the existing lines which are there, storm lines, would be reduced, number one. Number two is that, we have to look, and we should take the lessons from Bart, that why don't we look it into, because he has mentioned about 3 cities linked. So we have MMR, which is also, so today we are talking about Mumbai, but we have been seeing for last 3-4 years, Badlapur is getting loaded, which is a part of, MMR area. So why don't we think about it from the long-term perspective about MMR region, stormwater planning or water planning as such. The third thing is about the water, the new, the rainwater harvesting, I would say. So we have now metro lines coming up which are underground, the SEEPS line, which is the underground metro. So why don't we think about linking this, the entire thing, the underground utilities which are there, whether it is water pipeline, the storm waters, and the metro, and create a long-term plan for underground utilities. I am not talking about any new concept. This is already being done by ETC in Zurich, and now the same agency is now helping in Singapore to do the entire development plan of the underground utilities, and that is going to be a very long-term measure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. You wanted to say something, or yeah, Kavi?
First of all, I'd like to know how much information does BMC actually have, because we have all these underground
Yeah, just put it on. I don't think it's on.
It's on.
Okay.
We have all these underground utilities, and as it was just mentioned about stormwater drains and things like that, do we have maps of what is below the ground of Mumbai with which we can do some planning and stuff like that?
So let me not embarrass him. I'll say that we really don't have it. We'll have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more thing, if I might just add. See, the Dutch are planning 10,000 years. We can't do that. Americans are doing planning for 100 years. How many years are we planning for?
That briefly. So one thing to be precise, we have about 240 catchment areas. The stormwater catchment areas are different. The flows are different. They are put into about 243 catchment areas. They don't speak to each other because they are supposed to carry only that catchment area. That is point number one. For this underground utilities, we have the map of the stormwater drain which is constructed by the BMC. We have already GIS mapped it. But other than stormwater drainage, we have about 45 to 47 utilities. So they are all haphazard. And the roads, everything is constructed on it. We don't have maps for that. Okay. So all the projects in Mumbai takes more time because we always go for the projects without mapping it, because mapping disturbs a lot of routes. We can't stop the roads, traffic for mapping the utilities. And not all utilities are amenable for non-destructive, non-intermediate mapping. So some utilities you can't map unless you break them open. So to be honest, like sir said, we have utility mapping only for storm waters, but we don't have utility mapping for all the utilities. But in the current new projects, the cement concrete roads, we have asked them to go for the utility corridor, which will be compulsorily laid. So whichever the new utilities comes up for laying, that will go into the utility corridor, so that there will be historical baggage, but over a period of time, we plan to move on to this utility corridor. But it is going to be a slow and painful process, but sometime we'll reach there. Yeah. No, that what Mr. Bhatt said is that it's a once in a, it's a statistical thing. It is not about the years. It is not about 10,000 years of plant. Maybe 10,000 years everyone is dead. We don't know about that. But it is about the statistical probability. This is a logarithmic scale. Maybe 1 in 10 is a log 1 in 100 is a log 2, 1 in 1000 is log 3, 1 in 10,000 log 4. It is nothing to do with the long range vision. It is about how much chance they are willing to take. So like Mr. Fatak sir said, if it happens 900 millimeter in a single day, no city will be able to plan that. So that is an extreme event. It could happen once in a 10,000 years. So if you want to really plan for that, you want to really put that infrastructure, you want to really invest that kind of GDP for doing that works, then we can proudly say we have done the planning for a once in a 10,000 year event. It is quite possible the same event happens back to back next to each other. It's a statistical thing, okay. But fairly, for countries like us, we do a once in a 100-year planning, which is common across the department. I think that is fair enough given our financial constraints. Thank you.
So once in 100 years. Yeah.
We do
At the back. Yeah.
Warm greetings, sir. Myself, Yash Vikram. So, sir, we serve in the poor income community. We are a group of NGO. Sorry, we are an NGO of group of doctors. So my question is, I'm just curious to know that we have recently built the coastal road here in the Nariman Point, which is spread into kilometers. So I just wanted to know what is the impact or effect we are anticipating in the near future.
In what sense? In terms of easing traffic or in terms of climate change?
In terms of climate change and water level rising.
Would that have any impact on climate change and water level rising? We're talking about coastal road and its impact. I don't know whether there's going to be an impact.
There is two approaches. The coastal road is going to be very good in terms of addressing the global the temperature rise concern, because we are going to reduce a lot of emissions, the fuel emissions. The fuel usage will be less. So the carbon footprint, which is going to be reduced because of the coastal, it is enormous. That is how the project become viable. That is why the project is extended now from Versava to Mira Road, then to Thane. The extension happens because it is going to reduce a lot of fuel consumption as well as emissions. The second thing you are talking about, the global climate change causing the sea level rise. Some sections of it is already addressed. So the coastal road plan has already elements which can handle some level of sea rise. That is already incorporated, but it may not be up to 2050 levels. Maybe that interventions will come later. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
No, there's somebody at the back there. Yeah. And then after that, I'll come back to you.
Hello. Thank you so much for the presentation, sir. It was a really wonderful presentation. I just have one small question. Like, Netherlands is a rich country with a very less population. Mumbai is comparatively poor, but with a greater population. I think infrastructure-wise, Netherlands is doing amazing. Just my question is infrastructure the only way to solve this issue? That's the first. And secondly, when we are talking about marginalized communities, the Kodi community in Mumbai is the one that is going to be most affected by climate change. So what kind of plans does the government have in order to reimburse them in a proper way so that the infrastructure does not limit their abilities to continue their work? Thank you.
I don't know whether you'd like to take this? Maybe. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. I mean, basically, some stakeholders are going to lose in the process. Why don't you? And maybe you can also supplement it.
Yeah, I'll supplement.
Yeah.
Let me say a few things and then you jump in later on. Actually, I've always heard that Mumbai is the richest city in Asia. So no, but that says a lot, huh? It says a lot about how your society is organized. But there's a lot of money over here, and indeed compensation. I don't know whether I mentioned it. Yes, you need to compensate people if you need space, if you need land for this room for the Reservoir project, as I indicated. Yeah, you need to compensate people here or there. So that is definitely there. But you actually said, Mr. Vivers, is that that room for the river wouldn't work for Mumbai. Of course, the urban fabric is totally different. But the examples I gave, well, one was in the city Nijmegen. That is indeed true. Huh? But that you can't copy that in Mumbai. But the other example was just a piece of land which is inundated, or to create excess storage capacity over there to alleviate the city of Rotterdam from excess water. So that's, you can do a lot upstream as well. Huh? That would increase the, let's say, the water safety in the city itself. You had another question, I think. Oh, the local fishermen I don't touch because I think you are.
Whenever we take up the large projects, not necessarily these infrastructure projects, whenever we take the large projects, we always go for one is the environmental impact assessment. We always do that. Another is a social impact assessment. We always do that. It's mandated, so we do that. But people find there are some lack in that approaches also. As a matter of routine, we do that. So it may not really address some real concerns. I have to accept that. But for any project to be successful, there has to be a dialogue. Like Mr. Yang pointed out, there has to be a consultative process. And all sections of the society should be taken into confidence, and they should be having the confidence that even after the project, my livelihood will be unaffected or I will improve. That confidence has to be given. I think if you see the coastal road also, near Worli, earlier the span was 80 meters, which was sufficient technically. But later there was some demand, then people felt comfortable having a wider span. It was considered. So the government decided to increase the span, even though we increased the cost by 500 crores. Still the span was increased to give the confidence to the local communities. So whenever possible, feasible, government has the intention to give that confidence, to have the co-planning. I think that is a common theme. But still some problems do exist, that I have to agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, my name is Nivedita Bansal. My question is more for Mr. Mittal. Hello? Yeah. Hi, my name is Nivedita Bansal. My question is more for Mr. Mittal. So you spoke about the scenario development for different levels of seawater rise. Are there any scenarios developed for also opportunities? So right now there's a scenario for risks, but also for opportunities of what is it that ideally a resilient Mumbai would look like when it comes to flooding, when it comes to water management. Is there anything like that developed?
So you're talking about a what if scenarios?
So no,
Or
right now the
what if modeling, if this happens, then
no, it's more like you have modeled the risks and the threats or the kind of the situations where we are worse off. So are there also models of situations where we have implemented solutions and there is climate resilience, there is flood resilience?
the answer that I gave was in the context not of scenarios but of simulations. So simulation is in the context of all the resources that we have available, and on that basis, on the basis of the sea level rise, what are the areas which get flooded, and on that basis we develop models which are based upon existing resources. So that is generally the scenario mapping that we have available also. That is I think in that on that basis only the report of Niti Aayog also came out, and WMO. But as far as I think a SWOT analysis is the case, I don't think it's a very tough thing to do. but to have it available at hand, I am not very sure. But see, once you have the scenario mapping, SWOT analysis is more of a situational thing. So for what you need a SWOT analysis, that I think is the scenario. So if I have to only limit this question to sea level rise, so I I don't know of a SWOT analysis having been done for the sea level rise specifically, but it's largely the threats that we kind of look at. The opportunities, obviously, there would be certain opportunities for areas which are, you know, uh, high high areas which are not really habitated. But yeah, probably I don't know. I'm not very aware of it because it's generally looked at as a threat. But that's quite a interesting question to look at it as an opportunity also.
Okay. So so thanks a lot. Maybe a last question from you, and then after that we'll probably close this discussion. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the coastal road. For the information of those present here, in 2011, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra set up a joint technical committee to look at options for building the coastal road. And that committee came to the conclusion that building a road through a process of reclamation would cost 100 crores per kilometer. It was therefore the cheapest financial option, therefore build it by reclamation. Today, the cost of the coastal road is 1100 crores per kilometer, not 100 crores per kilometer, but 1100 crores per kilometer. The coalies were displaced by police brutally, almost at gunpoint. Forget about consultation with them and getting their views on board. The project was built without getting wildlife clearance, which is mandatory, gross violation of law. And today we are talking about now extending the coastal road up to Mira Bhayandar and wherever. Now the question is, if you want to build a dam across Mahim Bay, why are you building the remaining part of the coastal road as a sea link on stilts? And 20 years later, you'll say we want to dam all those areas as well. So I don't know what's wrong with the planning concept in this city, but it's completely, lack of planning, I would call it, the way decisions are being made.
So there was, in fact, an option of doing the coastal road as a dam. So there would be a water holding tank between land and the sea. At the same time, it could prevent the surge from the sea to come into the land. So, in fact, I personally feel that coastal road is a missed opportunity. So, but let's not get into that. It's already done.
No, we
But
have to get into it because you're building more coastal roads.
but that's a separate discussion we'll have. I think it's already 6:30, so we'll have to stop this discussion. Before we get into word of thanks, I just want to tell all the audience here that firstly thank Mr. Bhat Dujong for making a very, very insightful presentation. He's been a friend of Mumbai, he's been a friend of India, and he will continue to be so. He's going to be leaving his office from here and going back to Netherlands, but I'm sure he's going to keep his connections with us in the days to come. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Bhat Dujong for being here. So thank you for coming for this function today. All the best to you, and thank you very much for being a part of this discussion. So would you like to just go for a vote of thanks? Nandini, you will be doing this.
So, dear distinguished guest speakers, on behalf of Mumbai First Executive Board, and many of us are here, I want to sincerely thank each one of you for today's really insightful and meaningful conversation that we've all had. Mr. Badi, really thankful for sharing the Netherlands presentation. We will take a lot of the learnings. I know a number of people said Mumbai, Netherlands are not the same. They're not expected to be the same. But the trick is to get the insights in and to take ahead what we can. Thank you, Mr. Vellaris, and thank you, Aman, for being here. I think let me also thank Ashank for being here, and the brainchild with this Sanjay Ubali. I think Sanjay has been really pivotal in taking this forward, thinking this through, putting it together. This is our second conference on the coastal issue. And I think each one of you who've come here, participated, I'm really grateful for all of you to coming here. We will think a lot more. Mr. Vellaris, I think you're one step ahead of all of us, and we will all look to you to see how we can take this forward and how we can get this whole community to work along with you. Thank you, Mumbai First Team. As usual, there's a large team there, and kudos to all of you. Thank you very much.